character? How could this possibly have happened? I just don't understand. But but I'm alive. I'm alive. Ah, for fuck's sake! Welcome to Big Mike's Real Reviews. I'm Big Mike, and today I'm covering episode 5 of Loki, entitled Journey into Mystery. Now, I found this episode to be just as entertaining as the last episode, which was probably my favorite so far. So I thought this one was just as good. So I'm going to get right into my review. I'd give it about, like I said, like last week, about a 9.5. I really enjoyed it. There was tons of Easter eggs in this episode. I want to try and get to these things and break things down. So I'm going to drop my spoiler warning. You have been warned. If you haven't seen the episode, please watch this episode as soon as possible because it is very good and we got a lot in this episode. And I want to break this thing down and drop some Easter eggs for you guys. And let's get into it. So again, this episode was called Journey into Mystery. And at the end we saw the mid-credit scene last week. Loki wakes up and what we find out is called the Void. Okay, and in the Void, it's governed, or not necessarily governed, it's actually like guarded by this cloud creature called Alioth. No, not like Galactus in the Fantastic Four and the Rise of the Silver Surfer, but like it was just like kind of like whoever's behind the whole like TVA and whatever's going on is kind of like their guard dog. So we find out the Void is like at the end of time, supposedly. You know how the timeline flows, as it was explained by Miss Minutes in the little propaganda video. And so at the end of time, supposedly, is this Void, and that's where everything that is pruned goes. Because we find out as Renslayer is talking to Sylvie after the events of last week, how she actually did know that when things are pruned, they go to this void place, which is like kind of like a purgatory, to where you can't destroy the matter, because we know like matter cannot be destroyed; it can just be changed, right? So they send it to this void area, this purgatory, and that's where everything that gets pruned goes. Okay, so we start out with like some big Easter eggs. Okay, like when the episode first comes on and like it's zooming in to where Loki dropped into the Void. Now everyone was talking about this Stark Tower or Avengers Tower. This was a really cool Easter egg. I'm gonna drop it. I'm gonna drop the picture here too. So I don't know if it said Kang Industries or whatever. That's what it looked like, because it was instead of Stark, and it had kind of like the same logo as Stark Industries. But what I could make out, it said Kang. Now, not spelled Kang like Kang the Conqueror, but I think it was just like a play on how it's spelled. It was Qeng. So I was like, are they telling us right now, like in plain sight, but not really plain sight, because it was kind of like if you weren't paying attention, you'd have missed it, that like, is this really Kang behind this? Just, they kind of spelled it differently. I'm like, I see what you're doing here. So when the rest of the Lokis, gather up our Loki, and they're like, look, this is a Void. That's Alioth. He's here to kill us, because basically that's what Alioth does. He's trying to protect whoever's behind this from anyone, seeking him out. So whatever big threat there is that's in the Void, Alioth's job is to take it out, and he actually does kill whatever's dropped in there. Okay, so when they're going back to their hideout, there's another thing that I noticed, which was Thanos' comic accurate helicopter. That yellow helicopter, the comic accurate one that Thanos flew in the old comics. Man, how did we read those comics back in the day? But anyway, yes, we saw Thanos' old yellow helicopter, as it was like this underground, hideout that the rest of the Lokis had. That Kid Loki, Alligator Loki, Boastful Loki, and Classic Loki, they all hid out together, right, in this little hideout. And we find out what some of their Nexus events were as well. So Kid Loki says he killed Thor. I was like, whoa, what? Kid Loki killed Thor and that was his Nexus event? Oh my God. So classic Loki says, like, he actually made a projection and got away from Thanos. He was floating around in space. He found some like derelict planet that he was like on by himself. Then when he got lonely and tried to like, implement a plan to leave, that's when the TVA showed up. Now, Boastful Loki, now we see why his name is Boastful Loki. He's lying, of course, talking about, hey, after I killed Captain America and Iron Man, I claimed my prize of all 6 Infinity Stones. And they're like, even Alligator Loki was like, you're a liar. Like, that did not happen. So, but the funny thing is, leading into the hideout, we see underground, basically, right? They're showing a shot of things underground. We see like lots of food trays, like prison trays or school trays or whatever. And this was a great shot. We got a shot of Throg in a jar. So somebody put Throg in a jar, which I'm thinking maybe the TVA did. And he's trying to get out of the jar because right above him is another Mjolnir. And Throg is like jumping, trying to get at it so he could get to Mjolnir, I guess, so he could try and leave the void. I was like, wow. So all that being said, once they're in the hideout, they're talking about, their Nexus events, and our Loki is talking about Sylvie and how he trusts her and how they're trying to take down a TVA and trying to enlist the other Lokis. And Loki's like, look, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go because I'm going to kill Elias. That was Loki's big plan, okay? And so as soon as he's coming up out of the underground base, we have President Loki and some other Lokis, right? And no one knows how they found the base. Then we find out Boastful Loki made a deal or whatever with President Loki because he still wanted to be king of the void, apparently. And of course, President Loki double-crossed him or triple-crossed him as well. And that's the scene we got in the trailer. He was like, hey, what did you expect? He was saying that to Boastful Loki, like, you know I was going to stab you in the back. Then the rest of the Lokis were like, what did you expect type thing? He's like, what is going on here? Then Alligator Loki, this was a funny shot as well. Alligator Loki rushes President Loki and like bites his hand. Then when he pulls his hand out, like it's gone in like a Captain Hook moment. You know how the alligator like bit off Captain Hook's hand? And President Loki lets out this most hilarious scream ever. Like it was just so funny. So anyway, as we saw in the trailer or the episode 5 trailer that was dropped yesterday, or some of the Easter eggs, well, classic Loki ends up like projecting them fighting the rest of them, and that's how they escape. Except for, of course, Boastful Loki, they leave him there to fight really. So our Loki, classic Loki, and Kid Loki all escape because they decided to help Loki with his plan. They're like, look, we'll take you to Elias, but there's no way you're going to kill him, because Loki really didn't see that yet. So that was kind of like what they were showing here, because Kid Loki had kind of like this remote thing. And I don't know if he caused the USS Eldridge to drop, but anyway, the USS Eldridge dropped. Now, if you're not familiar with that, it's this old story of like, it's like an old wives' tale of the USS Eldridge trying to, perfect some kind of cloaking tech, right? And reports were like it actually disappeared for a while, or, whatever, and like maybe the cloaking tech work or whatever. But it's kind of like one of those like mysteries, right? So in this show, like the whole DB Cooper thing, they're like, okay, the USS Eldridge just got pruned for whatever reason, and that's why it disappeared. And we saw Elias completely decimate like the soldiers on the ship and the ship itself, and just completely destroy it. And in that sense, like our Loki is like, oh, I don't know what we're going to do here. So before all these events, let me back up a minute. When Sylvie is interrogating Renslayer, and Renslayer's trying to get Miss Minutes to give her some information, and they're basically stalling for time. So when she's stalling for time, some of the Minutemen rush in. Sylvie, of course, still has one of the pruning sticks or whatever that the Minutemen carry. And she actually takes Renslayer's temp pad as well. And so it's kind of like a standoff. And because Renslayer, she wants to find out the truth as well, but in her own like way. Because even when she interrogated B-15 noticed, she was like, you do want to find out what's going on. She was like, but you're never going to find out before Sylvie. And Renslayer's like, well, why not? And she said, because you just want to know. It was like, she needs it. She needs to find out what's going on. So after this standoff for a while, Sylvie actually prunes herself, because Renslayer did tell her about the void and how they had this fake spaceship that could get them there, which was a lie. So Sylvie did take a tent pad and she pruned herself so she could end up in the void. Once she was in the void, she met up with Mobius, who stole this pizza delivery car, or not stole it. I mean, it was just in the void. He just, decided to drive it. And he picks her up because when she gets there, Eliath is after her. Now, once she touched Eliath, she kind of enchanted the beast for a minute. And she saw that citadel that we still see in the trailer that we know they make it to. And apparently that's in the last episode. And so, she sees that. She gets in with Mobius. He's like, get in. And that's when they meet up with Kid Loki, Classic Loki, and our Loki. As after they see the USS Eldritch being, completely wrecked, they see a car coming, and Kid Loki's like, well, there's a car. And Kid Loki's like, oh, usually that means like, cannibalistic marauders or cannibalistic pirates, so it's never really good. And so our Loki's looking, and when it pulls up and they get out, he noticed that it's Mobius and Sylvie, so he's excited to see them both, of course. So, of course, they hash this plan to where they know somehow that Eliath is the key, or the guard dog, as you can say, for whoever is behind this. And so they're all on board for this, at this point. So Sylvie said she's going to enchant Eliath. That's her plan. She's going to enchant Eliath so he'll let her pass, so they can actually get to whoever's in charge. So she gives the tent pad to Loki, and she at this point where they're hashing their plan, and Loki's like, no, wherever you go, I'm going. So he hands the tent pad off to Mobius, and Mobius said he's going to go back to the TVA and he's going to burn it down. And so he was like, see you later, Loki, and he reaches out his hand, and the moment everyone wanted to see, Loki was like, I'm not shaking your hand. He's like, brothers don't shake hands. Brothers gotta hug. So he hugs Mobius and he says, thank you, my friend. So we see here how Loki now is getting that character development that the Loki that we did follow in the MCU that died was getting, but he's getting it a lot quicker. He's making actual like real friends and acquaintances and things like that. And actually he even, said to Sylvie that he's not that person anymore. He doesn't want to be that person anymore, and he can change, because that's kind of like what this whole thing is about. Even all the Loki said, every time they try to change, the TVA shows up, right? That's usually what happens. That's why there's so many Lokis, because it's basically they're saying their role is to fail or to still stay in whatever role that they're supposed to be in. And whenever a Loki tries to change, that's when a TVA shows up. So we get that nice moment of Mobius and Loki hugging, and they go to enchant Eliath, because Sylvie says, Loki, you can enchant, Eliath with me. And he's like, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. She was like, no, we're the same. So they're holding hands and they're trying to pull this off. And of course, it's not working. Eliath is, coming at them really fast. And then we see Classic Loki, who makes this grand illusion of Asgard. And Sylvia's like, how is he doing this? And our Loki's like, hey, well, maybe we're more powerful than we think. And so he's, creating this huge Asgard. And of course, because we know Eliath tries to go after the biggest thing first. And of course, it's a sham, it's an illusion. But he finally gets to Classic Loki, and Classic Loki's like, the famous Loki line of a glorious purpose, because that is his glorious purpose at this point. He's been around longer than most of the other Lokis. And he's like, look, they're finally going to get to something that really matters. So he sacrificed himself so that they could get there. So once he sacrificed himself, it actually gave Loki and Sylvie enough time to actually enchant Eliath. And then once that happens, we see the cloud part, and we can see that citadel or that castle that we know whoever's behind this, or supposedly whoever is behind this, resides, and that they go off to see what's going on. And that's what we're going to get in the final episode. Now, I did try and check out, was there, another a mid-credit scene or post-credit scene. I did not see one this episode, but we don't really need it for this one because now next week is the finale. Okay, because this is where all the culmination is here. They're at the end of time, supposedly going to meet whoever is in charge. Now, look, like I said from the building before, still thinking Kang. I mean, Kang, hey, even though it's spelled differently, it still said Kang. So I'm not certain if they're actually going to have Jonathan Majors Kang like as the. It still might be another variant Loki. It still could be like, I don't know at this point. My money's on Kang, but it's probably not. So at this point, I'm throwing the whole. It's like the whole Mephisto thing. Like Kang is the Mephisto of this of this series. So at this point, we just gotta wait and see. So if you saw it, let me know what you thought in the comments down below. If you caught any Easter eggs that I didn't catch, let me know in the comments down below. Please like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that bell for notifications so you will be notified of all my latest content. And once again, thank you for watching and see you next time.